Fucking hell.
George.
Okay, so it's going to be real short. So show starting at 39 minutes. Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show of agency type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Adam. I thought I was the hungover one.
So we've done about 40 minutes of a show that you guys haven't heard because the audio input was all fucked up, because OBS requires you to go in and select again the input that's already selected in order for the audio to come through, and I neglected to do that. So yeah, we actually solved the Israel-Palestine conflict. We solved the voice referendum fallout. We did it, and it's done. But you guys missed out, so sorry.
Yeah, it's a shame that no one will ever be able to hear the fantastic recommendations that we had.
We had a 54-point plan, just like Hillary Clinton, and much like Hillary Clinton's plan, it'll never see the light of day. So.
I don't know. Maybe there'll be a WikiLeaks article or something, with a data drop of the lost recordings of Unnatural Selection, and that'll all come up.
No, again, because it wasn't recorded. There is no backup if it is not recorded in the first place.
It's somewhere in the Twitch servers, though, George.
No,
I'm sure
that's not how, because it never went to Twitch in the first place. You understand? Oh, I'm so mad. I'm so immensely fucking mad about that.
It's all good, bro. Shit happens.
Let's do a silly one.
We could have said the amount of cooked shit that we could have said, and they just gotten away with because it went into a black hole.
Yeah, because it just never went anywhere.
Yeah.
Amazing. Oh, brilliant.
Electric vehicles?
Should we retread any of that voice stuff?
I'm mentally spent now. I am mentally broken.
Yeah, Tony Abbott wrote a thing and he sucks. I guess.
So Tony Abbott doesn't want us to do acknowledgement of countries anymore,
or even fly the indigenous flag.
Yeah, because that's progress. Okay, that's what happens when your side wins, is you try and roll back the victories, the historical victories to the other side. That's normal, cool stuff.
Yeah, because people said no to the referendum. They've said no to Indigenous people, according to him. So
that's the verdict of the Australian people. Is just we're going to shoot Indigenous people out into space. That's the verdict. That was what was on the ballot at the no referendum. I don't know.
I must have misread it.
Yeah, it says it was just about implementing a body that would make representations to Parliament, but it was actually about space people. So
yeah, nice. I guess, wow, I hate to agree with Peter Dutton, but I really needed more detail.
It turns out I did need more detail.
Yeah, it turns out I did need more detail.
It's just disgusting that the regret. Totally fucked. Yeah, like the only thing, like they can't help themselves, the Conservatives. Like they really absolutely cannot. It's just like, oh, we've made, you've made one step forward on like the most minor of things in terms of recognition of Indigenous people. It's like, we just got to roll that back. I don't feel comfortable with even tokenistic gestures like that cost me nothing. Roll it back, baby. Shut it down.
Yep. And don't fly that flag because that bothers me.
It hurts me. They call us snowflakes. They call the left snowflakes, but like, another flag. It's different. A different flag. How could I possibly?
And stand up in the stadium and wave your shark scarf.
Fuck off, Tony Abbott. Okay, so definitely what would normally be top story on the podcast, the High Court of Australia, of Victoria, has ruled. Sorry, no, the High Court of
Australia
has ruled that Victoria's rule that it was charging electric car users for essentially kilometers driven, rather, to sort of replace the fuel excise, was unconstitutional, and only the federal government has the power to impose such a tax. So essentially, it's called the ZLEV. You pay a certain 2.8 cents for every kilometer driven in an electric car, and or 2.3 cents per kilometer for plug-in hybrid vehicles, which doesn't make any sense to me because it's like plug-in hybrid vehicles are sometimes using petrol. So it's like you're paying the fuel tax to fill up your car, and then you're also paying a distance tax. And there were lots of messaging from the state government being like, if you've got an electric vehicle and you're not telling us how much you're driving, like, that's illegal. And buddy, we're going to come after you, mate. Like, got to tell us how much you're driving in order to.
How do they even enforce that?
Well, they know who's got an electric car, right? It's registered with the government. And so part of the requirement was that you would send in photos of your odometer to be like, this is how many kilometers I've driven. Yeah. Like, it's like you're trying to tell an Uber driver which corner you're standing on.
That's also insane. And oh my God, like, what a recipe for anyone feeling like there's government overreach, being like, you want me to tell you how far I'm fucking driving at any place? Like, I'm gonna go off the grid and live in the woods.
Couldn't you just I don't know, take a bunch of photos, of your dashboard at various stages of you driving it?
Yeah,
you could.
Or be decent at Photoshop and just change the digits.
Or that. No, not even that. Just like you drive heaps.
It's weird. I only drove 1 kilometer this year.
Yeah, but like
every
just
year.
a bunch of them. So like, you drive like say 30,000 kilometers.
You just take a photo every time you drive 1 kilometer for 40 days, and then you've got 40 years worth of data to go off. Yeah.
Or like, I don't know, I imagine maybe would it be looped into something like when you get your car serviced? Like, as they check mileage.
No,
and stuff
as far as I'm aware, it was just
and
you telling the government what you, and that's like, it's such an insane
the
thing.
honor system.
The honor system to rely on people to tell you how much tax they owe you. It's like, that doesn't seem like a recipe for success.
Oh, well, I guess that's kind of how all other taxes work. They're all like, you tell us once a year how much taxes you owe us.
Yeah, but it's all mediated by. But it's all mediated by, exactly. There's payroll, like you get documentation from your workplace. Like a lot of that stuff goes directly into the Australian Tax Office portal. Now, like my accountant, when he does my taxes, he goes, yep, I got your work, I got your shares. He just pulls everything up. He goes, great, I've already got. I was like, how did you? He's like, oh, because I'm your registered tax person. I've got access to your. But it's like it's all in government portals, and they just suck it down, right? So all the information, the government has it. In terms of your income tax or what they suspect.
So why do I have to report shit then?
Yeah, well,
just do it.
A lot of countries,
they just do it if they just have it, and fuck it. I don't need a tax return. Just only take the tax that I'm supposed to pay you. Then, if you know all my data.
Well, the way it works is the income tax that you make gets paid on your behalf to the government every year before you even see it. It's really just about confirming that you haven't had any other sort of expenses or things where you might get money back that you would then get a refund. If you're just going to a job and working a job and have a completely uncomplicated, sort of situation, you should, provided everything works correctly, pay the requisite amount of tax in a given year without needing to do anything. The reason you would file a tax return is because you're hoping that, I bought this computer and this computer was for work, so I can write that off, and then maybe you get a little bit back. That's why you do a tax return.
And geez, they don't make that easy, do they?
No.
Instead of just being like, I paid $2,000 for this computer, so this computer was $2,000. They go,
hang on a minute, buddy.
From the day you bought it, it immediately starts being worth less.
Yeah.
So, God damn it, you have to tell me how much this is going to depreciate over 20 fucking years or whatever.
Not 20 years, but yeah.
Well, no, I was doing that with I got a standing desk for my home office because I work full time from home. And it was all like, oh, well, it's a table, so it's going to last for 20 years. I'm like, it's a motorized table, so doesn't that change? And they're like, And I'm like, in the drop-down menu, where's electric standing desk as an option? You've got fucking filing cabinet and special chairs and things, but you don't have something for specifically this probably very common working from home item. They're like, So I had to be Googling around being like, how long standing desk meant to exist for. I'm like,
I'm just going to tell you, you're overcomplicating.
This is why, and Tom,
Adam,
legitimately.
If I don't do it right, jail.
Legitimately, no one's going to send you to jail for that. But legitimately, what you are outlining there, the complexity there, is why the accounting industry exists.
It's fucked.
the reason that the accounting industry exists is to help you navigate the unnecessary complexity that the government has put together in the creation of this tax system, right? So
it's the biggest scam.
There are countries out there where they have like a prefab tax return where they go, this is what we think you made. This is what we think your deductions might be. Is this right? Yes, no. If no, then you go into the detail. If yes, then here's your tax return. Like
I don't know.
It can be that simple, but like ours is even much more simple than like the United States.
Oh, America's is
fucked. So like ours is actually probably on the simpler end in that our tax gets taken from our paycheck, or, as we go throughout the year. So then it's not a thing of coming up with, whatever, 15 grand at the end of the year out of pocket. Right. So
it's probably a good way to segue here as well, because the interesting thing, the reason why they had this, so to get back to the story, the reason why Victoria obviously wanted to do this was because they were losing money on the fuel excise. So what is the fuel excise? The fuel excise is a tax that the federal government adds into petrol, which you pay for basically every time you go to the Bowser and fill up and pay for that. So it's like GST. It's built into the cost of the thing you're paying for. Right. Now, what the federal government was then doing was taking that money and then filtering it back down to the states. But obviously, with less cars on the road, the states are therefore getting less money for
fuel cars.
And this is where it gets complicated, because the states are still the ones that are meant to be funding all the roads, all the infrastructure that cars drive on. So Victoria, and by the way, Victoria's tax had the backing of all the other states and territories as well. They just hadn't implemented it. So Victoria was like the test case, right? So Victoria, put this charge in, and it's not constitutional because basically you're not allowed, that the state government isn't constitutionally allowed to tax people in this way. So which is why, and this is an interesting thing I think about federation, is that the tax system is a little bit broken in terms of, or the revenue system of Australia is a little bit broken when you talk about the responsibilities of the states and the federal government. In the Constitution, the states have a lot of power and are meant to do a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of the affecting things that daily people's lives count on: education, roads, various pieces of infrastructure.
Mate, I read the Constitution because of the voice referendum, okay? And it says that Aboriginals are going to take our backyards. So I think this Constitution's pretty fucked, mate. So...
And I don't remember exactly, but in terms of the way taxes work, there was a rejig of the tax system, however many years ago, where they had to redo a bunch of this because it just wasn't working. So the way it currently effectively works now is that the federal government obviously gets all the tax, and then they then release money to the states, either through things like GST, fuel excise, other taxes, and then sort of given to various states on whatever system
it goes up to the federal government and then gets split out amongst the states. So there's always some state that reckons it's unfair because they're getting less than they're putting in.
Which is what the Western Australia wants to secede, because they're getting their mining industry is getting
Let's cut it off and let it float out into the sea where it belongs. Fuck Western Australia.
So Western Australia is getting shitty because all their mining revenue is getting taxed to buggery, and it's basically funding the federal government over here, but they're not seeing necessarily the return on that in terms of direct investment into Western Australia. It's also the reason why you see states charging weird things like stamp duty. Stamp duty wasn't a thing. Some bright spark 100 years ago was like, the state government needs to make more money. We need to think of so this is where stamp duty comes from.
So what if anytime someone buys a house, they just hand us more money?
They just give us cash for no fucking reason whatsoever.
They just give us more money. Why?
Here's 50 grand. Why? No reason.
No reason.
You bought a house, so fucking give me 50 grand.
Like that's the buying a house tax.
And I heard there was something they suggested was that like rather than from a certain date, they were wanting to implement, I don't know if this is implemented or not, or they were just suggesting it, but it's like making it just like a yearly amount rather than every time you buy or sell a house, every time you buy a house. And I was like, oh no, that is an absolutely dangerous road to go down, because everyone will say, I don't want to pay 50 grand out of pocket. I would rather have the yearly amount. And then of course the yearly amount every year is just going to go up and up and up. And then it's like a house subscription. You've bought and paid for your house. You own a house and you've got a house subscription. You've got a Netflix subscription of a couple of grand a year that you just need to pay the government in order to own your own home. I was like, absolutely not. That is a terrible idea.
You're effectively doing that already with councils, right? Council rates, which is meant to be for, things
you don't
like,
have a choice.
rubbish,
garbage
removal,
collection,
and that kind of thing. various other services, lighting in your street, whatever else. But yeah, and the thing is, I guess, despite all these inventive ways that state governments have worked out to
everyone's so
charge people,
creative.
yeah, it's a creative industry. Raising tax
accounting.
The states are still underfunded to some extent, right?
Oh.
They are always, they never seem to have
got a
enough money.
huge deficit.
And then when they borrow, they actually borrow like a company. They don't borrow like the federal government does. So I guess my point being is, sure, if the fuel excise, eventually the fuel excise will bring in less and less money, and you can argue whether or not the fuel excise is necessarily ethical in the first place. I guess it's.
But surely you could use it like if what we're wanting to do, the whole central plot of all of this is that electric cars are better for the environment, right? We want to encourage people. We don't want to discourage people by levying taxes. So if you believe in the nudge theory of psychology that, of incentives and things like that, which is well established at this point, any additional costs that you apply to the owning and running of electric cars is going to dissuade a certain number of people from taking up those electric cars, which we as a society want them to do. So surely we should be doing the opposite. We should be cranking up the fuel excise and using that money to put subsidies on electric vehicles in order to encourage people into that uptake, right? Like, it makes no sense to me as a country where they're like, oh, you've taken up an electric car, you've done the right thing, great, now give us some money. Like, surely we should find other ways of creating that revenue to subsidize the road system based on,
there's got to be a better way of doing it. And I do feel like
maybe it's all registration fees. Maybe your rego is like $5,000 a year now instead of $1,000. Because we're using that money for the roads, right? Like, there's other ways of taxing things that aren't prohibitively expensive for electric car owners.
Yeah, it is a weird way that they went about this. I remember when they implemented
it's so bad.
This feels like you guys have slapped this legislation together in an afternoon.
It was one of the things I really did not appreciate from the Dan Andrews government. I was like, we need to be doing the absolute opposite of this and encouraging people to have electric cars, not discouraging them with extra taxes. Like,
like the whole, a lot of like what is preventing people from taking up electric cars is just they're prohibitively expensive.
Is the price?
Like cars brand new anyway. Prohibitively expensive for I think a lot of people, and then every car I've ever owned really has been like bought secondhand from someone, and I don't think there's a lot of secondhand electric vehicles kind of around. I guess I haven't been shopping for a car for a while, but it's crazy.
They, in order to flood the secondary market with electric vehicles, you need to make the first-hand market for electric vehicles much, much cheaper, right? Like, it only stands to reason. I think it's something like the majority of cars in Norway are electric cars. And it's like, well, why is that? Well, the government subsidizes it to the extent where buying an electric car is cheaper than it is to buy a fuel car. So why would you buy a fuel car, right? Like, and I bought a car recently, started this year, and we maxed ourselves out on a hybrid car. We literally could not have afforded an electric version of what, like, we just couldn't afford it. So it's like, even buying a hybrid car was a stretch. We had to go into debt in order to get that, to get a hybrid as opposed to a fully petrol car. It would have been much, much easier if we just went, fuck it, we'll just get a petrol car, pay $30,000 instead of more than $30,000 for a hybrid. It would have been way easier for us. But, unfortunately the incentives are not there for people buying a car to want, like, unless you are buying it in cash and you're just rich and you can drop $100,000 on a car. Like, unless you're that guy, you're not buying an electric car in Australia. That's why they make up 3% of the market or whatever. Like,
I mean, that said, like, over the last, I want to say 8 or so years, the uptake in electric vehicles has skyrocketed, right? And
people want them, but they physically can't afford them. Like,
I don't know, man. I've seen a lot of tests. I mean, I do live Melbourne Bayside, so
I live in the inner southeast, and you would not believe the amount of expensive cars that I see driving around.
There's a lot of Teslas around, is what I'm saying.
There's also a lot of fucking Maseratis and Lamborghinis as well, buddy. So you don't see him. You don't see him out in the extremely outer far east wooded areas that I live in. You see a lot of beat up Mazda 3s from 1996.
The Mazda 3 from 1996. I don't know if they existed back then, but the
You know what I'm
Camry
saying.
from 1996 still goes strong. That car will never die.
You see a lot of angry middle-aged dudes driving like blood red Holden Commodores dangerously. That's what you see around here. Just tearing through primary school roundabouts like the absolute menaces that they are.
I guess the point being is that electric vehicle uptake is on the increase. It's increasing rapidly.
People want it.
And we need as usual, the market does this, and then government and infrastructure and law and other bits and pieces is like, oh, what's going on? I gotta. Just like me today, I woke up with a massive hangover and I've slept in till midday, and then all of a sudden everyone's at lunch and I'm trying to catch up.
Are you saying that the Australian government is like Adam Doreen after a bender? Is that the
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
It actually explains a lot.
They've been gorging out on the fuel excise for fucking however many years, and now they're like, oh yeah.
Oh, but see, but if if we carry that analogy through, where's the fun times of the government then in the lead up to the?
That was all the infrastructure spending.
That was the infrastructure spending and the fuel excise, so they were getting and all the taxes and extra revenue. Loving it.
Good times. Shots for everyone.
Yeah. Paid for all those consulting fees.
You get a level crossing. You get a level crossing. You get a level crossing. Level crossing removals for everyone.
Well, speaking of, I actually don't know what we're speaking of, but I'm just going to transition to the next article. The next article that we're going to talk about, we're going to move over to the US, is that the US still has not figured itself out in the House. I don't know what's going on.
Your fucking life out, mate. So
okay, there's an analogy. If I'm a hot mess, I'm basically the US House. That's what but the difference is the US House went out in a bender and then has never recovered.
The US is still they're still on the bender. They are plastered off their faces.
Jim Jordan's let me tell you, buddy, the best way to get through a hangover is to never stop drinking. Jägermeister for everyone, baby.
Yeah, Jim Jordan standing up there saying, "Let's go to Revs." And it's all like,
bro, is that even open? Let's go to Siglo and get a fucking croque monsieur.
We've got shit to do. We can't do bags at Revs.
Bro, I'm so hungry.
Just back up. Last night, people were literally saying that.
Let's go to Revs.
Let's go to Revs.
Oh
Let's go to Revs. Did I
tell
you Revs came up as a potential wedding venue when we were looking up wedding venue?
No.
Sorry, Revs. For anyone who doesn't live in or has not spent a lot of time in Melbourne, Revs is a place called Revolver Upstairs, I believe is the full title. And it is the kind of bar club that will be still open at 9 a.m. on Monday morning. Yeah. People go out partying Sunday night, and you can see them when you walk into work down Chapel Street. You might see someone with white powder all over their nose going to you out the window at Revs. But when we were looking up just potential wedding venues, go into lists, then we looked at one that said, there's Revolver and it's on Chapel Street, and those photos, is that fucking Revs? You get married at Revs? I was like,
I guess so.
Maybe we should do it. No, let's not do it.
You know what it is? It's for those people, it's for those party people who met on a drunken night at Revs and
let's do
babe,
this. Yeah.
Wouldn't it be fucking crazy if we got married at Revs?
Do you know that Fatboy Slim does random gigs at Revs?
I did not know that.
If he's in Melbourne, he'll just do DJ sets at Revs. I'm like, oh man, I've never actually set foot in Revs, and I feel I've missed the window for it to be appropriate because when you're in Revs, from what I've heard, when you're in Revs, you're in your early 20s and you're absolutely writing yourself off, but there's creepy older people there as well. I've moved into the period where I'd be one of the creepy older people.
I'm a creepy older person.
If I then went to Revs, I'm in my mid-30s. So I've missed the window for it to be appropriate for me to go to Revs. So, that's a part of the young man in Melbourne culture that I have missed.
Yeah,
sadly. I would have been there in a heartbeat if I knew that fucking Fatboy Slim was doing the set.
Mid-30s, and I've got my first kid. I think my Revs days are officially behind me.
8-week-olds get in free.
Okay, well that's pretty good.
Yeah, nice.
Do you reckon Jim Jordan's ever been to Revs?
Probably not, but he's living the Revs experience in the States at the moment, which is getting absolutely fucked.
Very good. He's definitely living the Revs experience, and that he's up for multiple hours trying to secure his fourth vote. So he recently failed his fourth vote for the nomination in a closed door meeting.
Which is wild. So he's got 11 to go to be on par with his predecessor, Kevin McCarthy.
So I actually need to issue a correction. I made a mistake last week. I said there were two candidates, Steve Scalise and Jim Jordan, and the difference between the two was that they were both election deniers, but Jim Jordan was a white supremacist that compared himself to David Duke. So it turns out there was Steve Scalise who compared himself to David Duke. So we've got the election denying racist Steve Scalise on one side, and then on the other side, we have the election denying Jim Jordan, who was actually like a key architect of trying to steal the 2020 election. So both options are grievous and terrible. Now, Steve Scalise seems to be the more like sort of like establishment Republican. He's the one that'll like is meant to be the sort of adult in the room, according to the experts. But they're both
favorably compared himself to David Duke.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that gives you an indication of where the bar is in terms of this conversation and the leadership. So Jim Jordan, so Steve Scalise saw that he wasn't going to get up and has withdrawn himself from the race, as far as I can tell.
He dropped out.
Jim Jordan is now standing unopposed, but can't receive the majority of votes. So it just keeps going up and up for votes, like Kevin McCarthy sort of thing.
So the thing is with this, though, this is what I can't get my head around, is so the House, he stood up, the House didn't endorse him. The Republicans then went and had a closed-door meeting, like a caucus meeting, effectively, where they were like, we're going to you are no longer our preferred candidate. So they've got no candidate at all, is the point at the moment, I think, that this article is saying. They're candidateless.
Well, yeah, I mean,
there's a bunch of people saying I could do it, but no one agrees.
Just because the Republicans behind closed doors have like revoked his candidacy or have voted to revoke his nomination doesn't mean that that's necessarily like sticks. Like I think if you voted for Jim Jordan and he got enough votes, he would become the Speaker of the House. He's just not getting enough votes, right?
They would never put that proposition forward if he's not their official.
Well, who knows what they're doing? They've just done 4 votes for nothing that they lost against the majority of the House that they own. So it's like, you know, Dems in disarray is always their headline. Democrats in disarray, and it's like, well, Republicans are in real bad times.
November 18, I believe, is the deadline now for the government shutdown.
For it to not shut down.
Yeah.
And there's also like $1 billion aid package to Ukraine that's just sitting there on the table.
Yeah, and Biden, they're wanting to do
$106 billion. Sorry, excuse my French. $106 billion national security package, which includes the military aid for Ukraine.
Biden's wanting to tie it all in with aid to Ukraine, aid to Israel, trying to put it through as one big package in order to pass it through without incidents. But like the Republican caucus, the Republican House rather, controlled House can't govern. Like they are not capable of governing. And I think it's good that the so-called moderate Republicans are not getting behind Jim Jordan, the election denying extremist. But, at a certain point, you just need to like nominate Hakeem Jeffries, just pick a middle of the road Democrat, and just get all of the Democrats and just 8 Republicans on board, and you can have a Speaker of the House and keep doing the business of the country. Just nominate, get a Merrick Garland, some guy who's just meant to be some milquetoast, middle of the road guy that everyone can agree on. Just forget about the extremists, the sort of Matt Gaetz guys on the far right, and just do a deal with Democrats and get a speaker that's palatable to the majority. Surely this shouldn't be this hard. If it was the who's the guy who writes The West Wing? Aaron
Sorkin.
Yeah, if this is the Aaron Sorkin version of this story, that's what there'd be big, swelling, triumphant America fuck yeah music as Democrats and Republicans reach a cooperative, bipartisan hand across the aisle in order to govern America together and find a compromise. But what the how it's going meme version of that is Republicans reaching the hand of friendship across the aisle. And then, the actual photo is just, is Israel, Palestine, just people gutting each other down. It just seems like they're so hopelessly riven that there's no way that they're going to be able to find a solution on this. Like,
I would, I think a lot of conservatives would probably. The thing is, they'd be all worried about losing their seats at the next election if they did that, or what Trump would potentially think if that were to happen. So none of them.
I get like surely some of you are retiring. This is your last term, or surely you've got another job lined up afterwards for, or you're independently wealthy. If you're in the House or if you're in the Senate, like you're probably independently wealthy anyway at this stage because of being in the House or the Senate. Like Nancy Pelosi's worth tens of millions of dollars. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, why do you care about what's going to, like, shouldn't you just do the right thing because it's the right thing at some point? Like, aren't you, at a certain point, aren't you tired of running around scared like this and being worried about what's Trump going to do? What's my electorate going to do? Like, surely at some point you just do the right thing regardless of the consequences. And like, maybe people will respect you for doing the right thing. Is this like a crazy Aaron Sorkin nonsense thing that I'm saying right now? Like, it just seems like you need a Speaker of the House. You've got a couple of hundred Democrats on the other side. Like, maybe let's work something out. They seem to be able to vote as a block, even if the Republican side can't. Like, I don't understand the mentality of these people who want to be speaker so bad that they are just happy to get like cucked on international news 4 times, or in the case of Kevin McCarthy, 15 times. Like, aren't you, like, is humiliation your fetish? Is this something? Is this anything for you? Like, is this giving you some sort of stir, getting humiliated internationally this way? Like, I feel as though it has to be sexual, right? Like,
there's got to be something about, I think, the call to power.
So hungry for power.
That's why you've got the Scaramucci's of the world and various other people that obviously knew they were signing up with a psychopath,
doing a deal with the devil.
We're quite happy to do that for their, little 15 minutes of fame or whatever. Potentially, they may have gotten out of it if it had gone the other way. It's for, it happens everywhere, but the US, it's very obvious, shall we say.
I don't understand how anyone could pull the lever for Republican for a House seat. It's like, well, look at what happened when the Democrats are in power the last couple of years. The CHIPS Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, like big signature pieces of legislation got passed. And then the moment it's a Republican-controlled House, it's just like, just monkeys like throwing shit at each other. And then at the next election cycle, people go, yeah, I don't trust those Democrats. Vote Republican again. More of this. This is great because they announced an impeachment inquiry into Hunter Biden. And that's important to me as a voter in rural Iowa for some reason. Like, can you just see that they are not, like, I don't mean to editorialize and like put my opinion in it, but like they are not fit to govern. Like, this is not a debatable, this is, I don't think you need to be, I think even an impartial person would look at the Republican Party and just be like, they are not capable of doing the job of being a party in power.
Yes, I think if any of them saying they're an adult in the room should be laughed out of said room.
Yeah.
Like, it's just.
Well, there's not an adult in the room because Matt Gaetz is there. So.
Yep, fair.
Fan of children, Matt Gaetz. Come at me, Matt. Come at me, bro. Sue me. See how that goes.
Well, that's an uncomfortable silence to end on.
I don't know how to respond to that, but I don't know the full context. But there were allegations of Matt Gaetz having
investigation about moving a minor across state lines.
Inappropriate relationships with minors, yes.
Yeah.
And paying for sex and drugs via Venmo and calling it like tuition fees.
Cool.
Yep. Cool and normal.
Cool. Very cool and
for
normal.
The party that's so up the Democrats' ass about like sex trafficking and saying that the Democrats are a bunch of like, a bunch of pedophiles and Pizzagate and they literally the person who's heading up their fucking far right movement is an accused pedophile. Like that's just so crazy to me. They talk all about family values and all this sort of stuff. Meanwhile, Lauren Boebert's giving her boyfriend a hand job in the cinema at the theater.
At Beetlejuice.
At Beetlejuice the musical. Like vaping and drinking and literally feeling up her boyfriend over the. It's just like, wasn't your side the morality side? Like, remind me which one that was again. I just think the audacity of it is just like, it's impressive. You got to admire their complete unwillingness to acknowledge reality.
Oh yeah. It must be nice, maybe, to live in just that kind of that complete lack of shame.
On that note,
lack of shame.
we have been, we are, and we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Make sure you follow us on all the bullshit social medias that have, do, or ever will exist at Unnatural Show. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and motherflipping TikTok. Make sure you follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Threads at George Tsipos.
You can follow me on Twitter at Tom D. Heath.
And you can follow me down to the local Tesla outfit where I'll be now purchasing a new car. Without, what? Why not?
No, because Elon Musk is a cave troll.
Okay.
You can buy another electric. Get a Polestar or something. Get one of those. They look good.
Polestar, which sounds very exciting.
Get an Ioniq 5.
I don't know what that is, but it sounds like an energy drink or something.
These are electric cars.
Very specifically, it's a blue energy drink. That's what I'm picturing in my head right now.
These are both electric cars and new flavors from Monster Energy. Thanks for listening, guys. Love your faces. We will see you next week.
You reckon it's like berry flavored or?
I was thinking more like a raspberry, like it's red goes fast.
Blue. No, blue. But
I know what you were thinking, but my Ioniq 5 is completely different. So,
well,
and it hydrates and it's got electrolytes.
Electrolytes are very good.
It's Powerade with caffeine. Is that a thing? Did I just make up $1 billion idea at the outro of this podcast?
I trademark all of the things.
I trademark TM. I'm going to mail a podcast to myself to make sure that we own that. If that doesn't exist, that absolutely needs to exist in order to.
I swear they do.
Yeah. Should we? Yeah, we should stop the show.
Yeah.